Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. In Matthew 5:16, the sun slowly rose over the quiet town of Cedar Grove. Dew rested on the green grass, birds sang from the oak trees, and church bells echoed across the peaceful streets. Inside a modest white house, Hannah Mitchell, a 34-year-old Christian school teacher, knelt beside her bed with her Bible open. She closed her eyes. Lord, thank you for another day. Help me to love people the way you love them. Let every word I speak and every choice I make bring glory to you. In Jesus' name, amen. She smiled, picked up her Bible, and read Matthew 5:16 one more time before heading downstairs. The smell of fresh pancakes filled the kitchen. Her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Alina Brooks, sat at the table waiting. Good morning, Hannah. You spoil me every Saturday. You spoiled your family for 40 years. It's your turn now. The elderly woman laughed. You always know how to make someone smile. She poured orange juice into 2 glasses. God has been good to me. Sharing a meal is the least I can do. Looked at Hannah with admiration. Mrs. Alina, most people your age are too busy to notice an old woman. She gently reached across the table and squeezed her hand. You're not invisible to God, and you're certainly not invisible to me, Mrs. Alina's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. After breakfast, Hannah walked towards Cedar Grove Christian School carrying a worn leather bag. Along the way, she noticed 12-year-old Lucas Reed sitting on a curb with his head down. His backpack lay beside him. She slowed her steps. Hannah, good morning, Lucas. The boy barely looked up. Lucas, morning. She sat beside him. Something's bothering you. He shrugged. Kids keep making fun of my clothes. She looked at his faded sneakers. Do you know what I see? He shook his head. I see a young man who's kind to everyone, helps classmates with homework, and never leaves anyone sitting alone. Lucas frowned. Nobody notices those things. She smiled warmly. God does. He stared at the sidewalk. Sometimes I wish I could disappear. Her expression became serious. Never say that. Your life matters. You were created on purpose and for a purpose. Lucas finally smiled. You really believe that? Oh, my heart. When school began, Hannah welcomed every student with a smile. Hannah, good morning, everyone. The children answered together. Students, good morning, Miss Mitchell. She wrote one sentence across the chalkboard. Kindness changes lives. A student raised his hand. Nathan, Miss Mitchell, is kindness really that powerful? She nodded. Let me ask you something. If someone is having the worst day of their life and you choose to be kind, do you think they'll remember it? Several students nodded. Sometimes one kind word can stop someone from giving up. The classroom became quiet. Across town, another story was unfolding. A rugged man stepped out of a pickup truck. His name was Ethan Brooks. Once a respected firefighter, he had become bitter after losing his wife and daughter in a devastating house fire 3 years earlier. He hadn't entered a church since the funeral. He walked into a hardware store. The cashier smiled. Morning, Ethan. He barely nodded. And need some nails. The cashier handed him a box. How have you been? He sighed. He's still breathing. The smile disappeared from the cashier's face. I'm sorry. Without another word, Ethan paid and left. Outside the store, Hannah happened to pass by carrying groceries for Mrs. Alina. One of the bags ripped. Apples rolled across the parking lot. Ethan watched silently. Several people walked past without stopping. Finally, he bent down and picked up one apple. She smiled. Thank you. He handed it to her. You should have bought stronger bags. Instead of taking offense, she laughed softly. Probably right. He expected an argument. Instead, she simply thanked him again. As he turned to leave, she spoke. Hope today treats you kindly. He looked back, and it won't. She answered gently. Pray that it does. He froze for a brief moment, then walked away without replying. Yet something about her calm voice stayed with him long after he drove away. That evening, Hannah attended Bible study at Cedar Grove Community Church. Pastor David opened his Bible. Pastor David, tonight we'll remember that faith isn't only what we believe. It's how we love. Everyone bowed their heads. As Hannah prayed, she silently asked God for one thing. Lord, help me be a light to someone who has forgotten there is hope. Across town, Ethan sat alone in his dark living room staring at an old family photograph. For the first time in years, Hannah's words echoed in his mind. I'll pray that it does. He quietly whispered into the empty room, if you're really there. I don't know how to find you. The next morning dawned with dark clouds covering Cedar Grove. A cool breeze swept through the streets as people hurried to work before the rain arrived. Inside her home, Hannah finished reading from her Bible. She smiled as she read aloud. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In Proverbs 3:5 she closed the Bible. Lord, I don't know who needs you today, but lead me to them. After breakfast, she grabbed her umbrella and walked toward town. Across Cedar Grove, Ethan sat on the porch of his small house holding a framed photograph of his wife, Sarah, and their daughter, Lily. He stared at their smiling faces. His neighbor, Tom Walker, walked over carrying a cup of coffee. Tom's morning. Ethan morning. Sat beside him. You haven't been sleeping again. He shrugged. Sleep doesn't change anything. He looked at the photograph. Sarah wouldn't want this for you. His jaw tightened. Don't. Tom sighed. I'm only saying she loved seeing you smile. He stood up. That man died 3 years ago. Without another word, he walked back inside, leaving Tom standing silently on the porch. Meanwhile, Hannah arrived at the school. As students entered the classroom, she noticed Lucas sitting alone again. She walked over. Hannah, good morning. Lucas, morning. She knelt beside his desk. Did yesterday get any better? He nodded slightly. Lucas, a little. She smiled. Sometimes a little is how God begins something big. The boy smiled for the first time that morning. After school ended, heavy rain poured across Cedar Grove. Hannah hurried toward the bus stop carrying groceries for Mrs. Alina. Suddenly she heard shouting. A young mother stood beside her broken-down car while her little daughter cried inside. Drivers passed without stopping. She immediately ran over. Hannah, are you all right? The exhausted woman wiped tears from her face. Emily Parker, the engine quit. I don't have money for a tow truck. She looked toward the frightened child. Don't worry. We'll figure something out. Just then, Ethan drove by in his pickup truck. He noticed the stranded family. For a moment, he almost kept driving. Then he remembered Hannah smiling as she picked up her groceries the day before. He sighed and pulled over. Stepping out into the rain, he walked toward them. Ethan opened the hood. Emily blinked in surprise. Emily, can you fix it? He shrugged. Maybe. Hannah smiled warmly. Hannah, thank you for stopping. He avoided looking at her. I'm just fixing a car. She nodded. Sometimes that's exactly what someone needs. For nearly 20 minutes, he worked under the hood while rain soaked his jacket. Finally, he tightened one last bolt. The engine roared back to life. Emily gasped. Emily, it works. Her little daughter clapped happily. Little girl, you're a superhero. He almost smiled, almost. Emily reached into her purse. Emily, please let me pay you. He shook his head. Keep it. She stared in disbelief. Emily, thank you. Without saying another word, he climbed back into his truck. Before closing the door, Hannah spoke. You made someone's day today. He looked at her. Don't make it into something it's not. She answered softly. Kindness always matters. He drove away before she could say anything else. That evening, Ethan sat alone at his kitchen table. He remembered the little girl's smile. For the first time in years, helping someone had made him feel something besides anger. He didn't know what to call it, peace. It lasted only a few moments before sadness returned. He quietly whispered, "Why couldn't I save my own family?" Tears filled his eyes. He lowered his head into his hands. At church, Hannah helped prepare meals for families struggling to make ends meet. Pastor David walked beside her. Pastor David, you look happy tonight. Hannah, I saw someone choose kindness today. He smiled. Pastor David, God often begins changing a heart long before anyone notices. She nodded thoughtfully. I think he's working on someone who doesn't even realize it. Pastor David looked at her with a knowing smile but said nothing. Late that night, Ethan opened an old wooden box filled with memories. Inside was Sarah's Bible. Dust covered its worn leather cover. He slowly opened it. A folded piece of paper slipped onto the floor. He picked it up. It was a handwritten note from Sarah. If you ever lose hope, remember that God never loses sight of you. Even in the darkest night, his light is still shining. His hands trembled as he read the words again. He looked toward the ceiling. Sarah. I wish you were here. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. He closed the Bible against his chest and sat silently as rain tapped against the windows. For the first time in years, he didn't put the Bible back in the box. Instead, he left it on the table. Morning sunlight broke through the clouds, casting golden rays across Cedar Grove. The rain had washed the streets clean, and the town seemed refreshed. Inside her home, Hannah poured a cup of tea and opened Sarah's favorite devotional that Mrs. Elena had once given her. She read quietly. And let us not grow weary of doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Galatians 6:9. She smiled. Lord, help me never grow tired of loving people. Across town, Ethan awoke to the sound of birds outside his window. His eyes fell on Sarah's Bible resting on the kitchen table. For a long moment he stared at it. Finally, he walked over and opened it. The pages naturally fell open to Psalm 34. He quietly read the words. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. He closed the Bible quickly. Ethan, if you're really close. Why do I still feel so alone? Silence filled the room. Later that morning, Hannah's class gathered outside for a community cleanup project. The students wore work gloves and carried trash bags. Hannah, today isn't about getting credit. The children listened carefully. We're serving our neighbors because love is something we do, not just something we say. Lucas raised his hand. Lucas, what if nobody thanks us? She smiled. Then God still sees every act of kindness. The students nodded and spread throughout the neighborhood. Near the town square, Ethan was repairing a fence outside an elderly man's house. The owner, Mr. Harold Benson, leaned on his cane. Mr. Benson, you've done enough, son. I can finish the rest. He shook his head. Ethan, you shouldn't be climbing ladders. The elderly man chuckled. Mr. Benson, you're a good man. His expression hardened. No. I'm just fixing a fence. Before Mr. Benson could answer, laughter echoed from down the street. Ethan looked over. Hannah and her students were picking up litter, planting flowers, and helping neighbors carry groceries. Lucas waved enthusiastically. Lucas, good morning, Mr. Brooks. He gave a small wave. Morning. The boy ran back to the others. Mr. Benson smiled. Mr. Ben, looks like you've made a young friend. Shrugged. Kids wave at everybody. The elderly man smiled knowingly but said nothing. As the students finished cleaning, one little girl noticed a stray golden retriever trapped beneath a fallen tree branch. Emma, Miss Mitchell. Come quick. Hannah hurried over. The frightened dog whimpered. She knelt beside it. Hannah, easy. You're safe. The branch was too heavy to lift alone. Just then, Ethan happened to walk by carrying his toolbox. She looked toward him. Hannah, could you help me? He looked at the frightened animal. Without hesitation, he set down his toolbox. Together they lifted the heavy branch. The dog slowly crawled free. Its tail wagged wildly before licking Hannah's hand. The children laughed with joy. Emma hugged the dog. Emma, we saved him. Hannah smiled. God sent someone strong enough to help. She glanced at Ethan. He looked away. Anyone would have done it. She gently shook her head. Not everyone stopped. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the dog unexpectedly walked over and rested its head against Ethan's leg. The children giggled. Lucas laughed. Lucas, I think he likes you. A faint smile appeared on Ethan's face. It disappeared almost as quickly as it came. That afternoon, Hannah visited Mrs. Aliner. The elderly woman was watering flowers on her porch. Mrs. Aliner, you're glowing today. She laughed softly. Hannah, maybe because I watch children discover the joy of serving others. Mrs. Aliner sat in her rocking chair. And what about the man with the sad eyes? Hannah knew exactly who she meant. She looked toward the road. He's carrying a burden that's too heavy for one person. The elderly woman nodded. Sometimes people don't need answers. She looked at Hannah. Sometimes they only need someone willing to walk beside them. She quietly considered those words. That evening, Cedar Grove Community Church hosted a free dinner for anyone in town. Families filled the fellowship hall. Children laughed while volunteers served warm meals. Pastor David welcomed everyone. Pastor David, no one should eat alone tonight. As Hannah carried a tray of food, she noticed Ethan standing outside near the parking lot. He looked toward the church doors but didn't go inside. She stepped outside. Hello. He nodded politely. Evening. She held out one of the meal trays. Would you like some dinner? He hesitated. I'm not here for church. She smiled kindly. Good. He looked confused. Good. The dinner isn't only for church members. It's for everyone. He looked at the tray. After a long silence, he accepted it. Thank you. She nodded. You're welcome. He expected her to invite him inside. She didn't. Instead, she simply wished him a peaceful evening and returned to the fellowship hall. Watching her leave, he quietly whispered, why aren't you trying to change me? Later that night, Pastor David stepped outside and noticed Ethan sitting alone on a bench, finishing his meal. He walked over. Pastor David, mind if I sit? He shrugged. Ethan, it's a free country. The pastor smiled and sat beside him. For several moments, neither man spoke. Finally, the pastor broke the silence. Pastor David, sometimes the quiet is where we hear God the clearest. He stared into the night. What if he isn't speaking? The pastor looked at the lights shining from the church windows. Pastor David, or maybe he's been speaking through people all along. Ethan didn't answer. But for the first time in years, he didn't walk away from a conversation about God. The church bells rang softly in the distance, slowly rose above Cedar Grove, ending the evening with a quiet sense of hope. The following Monday, Cedar Grove awakened to the sound of church bells and busy traffic. Shop owners unlocked their doors, children hurried to school, and the aroma of fresh bread drifted from the town bakery. Hannah stood outside Cedar Grove Christian School, greeting each student with a warm smile. "Hannah, good morning, everyone." The children greeted her cheerfully as they entered the building. Lucas paused before going inside. "Lucas, Miss Mitchell." She looked at him. Yes, Lucas." He hesitated. "Lucas, do you think God really hears every prayer?" She smiled gently. Every single one." He lowered his eyes. "Lucas, even the little ones?" She nodded. Especially the little ones." The boy smiled and hurried into class. Across town, Ethan was working at Mason's Auto Repair, where he had recently accepted part-time work. His employer, Jack Mason, handed him a repair order. "Jack, the Henderson family is picking up their truck this afternoon." He looked over the paperwork. "Ethan, what's wrong with it?" "Jack, transmission needs replacing." His eyebrows rose. That's expensive." Jack sighed. "Jack, it is." Just then, a worried couple entered the garage. The husband stepped forward. "Daniel Henderson, Mr. Mason. We came about the truck." Jack removed his cap. "Jack, I'm afraid the repairs will cost more than I hoped." Daniel looked at his wife. "Daniel, we don't have that kind of money." His wife, Rachel Henderson, held back tears. "Rachel, without that truck, Daniel can't get to work." Ethan quietly listened from across the garage. Jack frowned. "Jack, I'm sorry." The couple thanked him politely and slowly walked toward the door. He watched them leave. Without saying a word, he removed his work gloves and followed them outside. "Ethan, wait." They turned around. "Daniel, yes." He scratched the back of his neck. Bring the truck back tomorrow morning." Rachel looked confused. "Rachel, why?" I'll repair it after hours." Daniel blinked. "Daniel, we can't afford to pay you." He looked away. I didn't ask you to." The couple stared at him in disbelief. Rachel's eyes filled with grateful tears. "Rachel, thank you." He simply nodded and returned to the garage. Jack had witnessed the entire conversation. "Jack, you know that'll take most of the night." He shrugged. They need the truck more than I need the sleep." Jack smiled quietly. "Jack, your heart's changing, Ethan." He didn't answer. Later that afternoon, Hannah and her students visited Cedar Grove Nursing Home. The residents smiled as the children sang hymns and handed out handmade cards. One elderly man sat alone near a window, staring outside. His name was Walter Collins. She walked over. "Hannah, may I sit with you?" He nodded. "Walter, most people don't ask." She pulled up a chair. Then I'm glad I did." He held a faded photograph of a young woman. "Walter, my wife passed away 5 years ago." She looked at the picture. She had a beautiful smile. He smiled sadly. "Walter, she always believed I'd see her again." Silence filled the room. Finally, he asked Walter, "Do you believe that?" She answered without hesitation. Yes." He looked into her eyes. "Walter, how can you be so sure?" She gently opened the small Bible she carried in her bag. Because Jesus made a promise." She read softly. John 14:1-3, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. I am going there to prepare a place for you. I will come back and take you to be with me." Walter wiped away a tear. "Walter, I haven't heard those words in years." She closed the Bible. His promises never grow old. That evening, Ethan stayed late at the garage. The sun disappeared below the horizon as he worked under the Henderson family's truck. Hours passed. His hands became covered in grease. His back ached. Still he continued. Near midnight, he tightened the final bolt and started the engine. It purred smoothly. He smiled to himself. Just then, he noticed someone standing in the doorway. It was Hannah. She carried 2 cups of hot coffee and a small paper bag. Hannah, I thought you might be hungry. He looked surprised. Ethan, how did you know I was here? She smiled. Jack mentioned you were staying late. He wiped his hands with a rag. You didn't have to come. She handed him the coffee, no. Then she handed him the paper bag. I wanted to. He opened it. Inside was a turkey sandwich and a homemade oatmeal cookie. He laughed softly. You really planned this. She smiled. Kindness usually takes a little planning. He looked at her for a moment. Why are you always helping people? She leaned against the workbench. Because someone helped me first. He looked puzzled. Who? She smiled warmly. Jesus. Silence filled the garage. He expected her to preach. She didn't. Instead, she picked up the empty coffee tray. Don't work too late. She turned and walked toward the door. Before she stepped outside, he spoke. Ethan, Hannah. She looked back. Yes. He hesitated. Thank you. For the coffee. Her smile grew brighter. You're welcome. She left. He watched the door close behind her. For the first time in many years, the garage no longer felt empty. The next morning, Daniel and Rachel arrived to pick up their truck. Daniel started the engine. It ran perfectly. He looked at Ethan. Daniel, how much do we owe you? He shook his head. Nothing. Rachel stepped forward. Rachel, please let us repay you somehow. He smiled faintly. Someday when someone else needs help. Help them. The couple nodded. Daniel, we promise. As they drove away, Jack placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. Jack, that's the best payment anyone could ask for. He watched the truck disappear down the road. For the first time since losing Sarah and Lily, he felt that perhaps his life still had a purpose. Far above Cedar Grove, the morning sun shone brightly through the clouds, as if reminding everyone that even after the darkest storms, God's light still reaches those willing to open their hearts.